Now, the new atheists direct fire at a number of religions, but mainly on Christianity. And as a Christian, I'm going to concentrate there, because other religions will rightly wish to speak for themselves. Now, the blanket statement, "religion poisons everything," followed by a litany of the evils of religion, is about as useful as saying "science poisons everything," followed by a litany of the evils of science, poisoning the environment and creating napalm and poison gas. Abuse must be distinguished from use. Abolishing religion, after all, to get rid of its abuse is about as intelligent as abolishing science to get rid of pollution, or abolishing money to get rid of greed. Now, I want to be very open with you. As a Christian, I am ashamed that the name of Christ has been associated with violence and war, because those who fight in the name of Christ, far from obeying him, are disobeying his explicit commands. He forbade the use of physical violence to protect him or to further his message. As he said to Pilate, "I have come to bear witness to the truth." Truth, religious or secular, ladies and gentlemen, cannot be imposed by force. After all, it was Christ who said, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God," on which the separation between church and state is based. Now, here's a puzzle. Since the new atheists claim to be against religious violence, they should be applauding Christ, as I see it, for his denunciation of hypocritical and abusive religion, and for his insistence on the highest standards of morality. I'm afraid the new atheists confuse the essential message of Christianity by the horrific abuses of Christendom. Because after all, Christian teaching is foundational to European civilization. The prominent German thinker Jürgen Habermas, who calls himself a methodological atheist, says Christianity and nothing else is the ultimate foundation of liberty, conscience, human rights and democracy, the benchmarks of Western civilization. To this day, we've no other option than Christianity. We continue to nourish ourselves from this source. Everything else is postmodern chatter. Ironically, Christianity gave Europe its universities that educated the new atheists, the liberty that permits them to propagate their views, and the law that protects them. As influential intellectual atheist John Gray points out, the new atheists defend liberal freedoms without asking where they come from. Now, perhaps they don't ask because they so exalt science that they just don't take history seriously. They assert, for instance, that the very existence of Jesus is disputed by scholars. But I don't see that they've checked with ancient historians, since the existence of Jesus doesn't appear to be in dispute with them. Professor Graham Clark, the author of the chapter on Christianity in the Cambridge Ancient History, who's not a Christian, says, "Frankly, I know of no ancient historian who would have a twinge of doubt about the existence of Jesus Christ." Such a cavalier attitude to history does nothing, in my view, to enhance new atheism's claim to intellectual high ground. Now, that brings me to another major issue in this debate. The new atheists ask us, with John Lennon, to imagine a world without religion, a world free from religious violence. But you may have noticed, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not John Lennon, I'm John Lennox. And I would invite the new atheists to imagine a world without atheism, without the Gulag, without the killing fields, without the Cultural Revolution, a world without Stalin, Pol Pot or Mao. Now, the disturbing thing is that leading new atheist Richard Dawkins says that atheism has nothing to do with such atrocities. He says he doesn't know of an atheist who would bulldoze cathedrals like Chartres and Notre Dame. Yet that was precisely what Stalin did on a large scale. But it's not just atrocities that worry me, ladies and gentlemen, but the effect on education. I sat with a 13-year-old girl in the former German Democratic Republic on the day that she was told she couldn't have any more education, since she was not prepared to swear public allegiance to the atheistic state. One is tempted to call that intellectual murder. It was committed many times, because the fact is that atheism and communism are inseparable. In Marxism, the criticism of religion was the foundation of all criticism. God had to go, and intellectual murder followed. In the GDR, the choice was simple. It was either atheism or no higher education. And in many other countries, atheism could be taught to children, whereas Christian parents and churches were not allowed to teach their faith to children and young people. Now, is this what the new atheists wish to see again in Europe? They need to tell us clearly, because by using terms like child abuse in connection with the religious teaching of children by their parents, child abuse being a criminal offence, they raise the spectre of days gone by, or at least days that we hoped had gone by. Nor is the new atheist cause helped by their attempt to enlist science, wrongly believing it to be the only way to truth. Christopher Hitchens says again, thanks to the telescope or the microscope, religion no longer offers an explanation of anything important. Well, that sounds like tunnel vision to me. And Wittgenstein would have said to it, I think, that the great delusion of modernity is that the laws of nature explain the universe for us. The laws of nature describe the universe. They describe the regularities, but they explain nothing. In particular, as Nobel Prize winner Sir Peter Medawar said, science cannot answer the questions of a child, what we are here for and what is the meaning of life. The irony is that it is Christianity that gave the new atheists and everyone else the impulse to do science. Most of the great European pioneers of science believed in God. Galileo, Copernicus, Kepler, and Newton. All of them expected to find law in nature because they believed in a lawgiver. Now, it wasn't simply that they believed in order. It was the specific belief in a rational creator that drove their faith that science could be done by rational human beings made in the image of God. And the new atheists are therefore wrong in thinking that faith is not involved in either their science or their atheism. Faith for them is an irrational religious concept that rejoices in the absence of evidence. This confusion of faith with blind faith leads them to make wonderful statements like Christopher Hitchens, our belief is not a belief. Our principles are not of faith. This statement is intriguingly followed by its negation. We distrust anything that contradicts science or outrages reason. Sounds a bit oxymoronic to me. You see, the irony is this, that faith in the rational intelligibility of the universe is essential to all science. Yet the new atheism must have that faith in themselves, but they have no grounds for it. Because if the human mind has been cobbled together by mindless, unguided processes, as they say, why should we trust our cognitive faculties and the validity of any belief they produce, atheism and science included? John Gray is no friend of Christianity, and yet he says modern humanism is the faith that through science humankind can know the truth and so be free. But if Darwin's theory of natural selection is true, this is impossible. The human mind serves evolutionary success, not truth. And reducing thought to nothing but neurophysiology spells an end to rationality, but seems to be the price you have to pay for the new atheism. God doesn't compete with science. Science didn't put the universe there, God did. God is the explanation of why we can do science. Yet constantly, the new atheists set up in Europe the idea that it's either God or science. That is a naive thing to do, even if you're an atheist, because people just might be tempted to choose God and therefore end up being sadly more scientifically illiterate than they were before. When Newton discovered the law of gravitation, he didn't say, wonderful, science explain it, therefore I don't need God. After all, are we really to think that understanding the laws of internal combustion makes it impossible to believe in Henry Ford? No, Newton wrote the Principia Mathematica, one of the most brilliant works of science in history. with the intention of persuading thinking people to believe in God. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you will understand that I can scarcely recommend such an anti-scientific blind faith to the new Europe. It makes infinitely more sense to me as a scientist to believe that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and all things were made by him. Rationality does not come from irrationality. Sense does not come from nonsense. But finally, the big question of the new atheism and ethics. We don't need God to be good, claim the new atheists. Well, of course, atheists can be good. Sometimes they shame me. My theism teaches me that. Since all people are made in the image of God, they possess an innate sense of morality, whether they believe in God or not. On the other hand, atheism doesn't explain how we all regard certain things as absolutely wrong, like torturing children. Nor does it explain the passion of new atheism's moral outrage. How could random events and blind natural selection possibly account for the absoluteness of the values that justify such intolerance of faith? It's pretty hard to defend absolute morals on anything other than religious grounds, as Richard Dawkins says. But it's actually pretty hard, ladies and gentlemen, to defend any morality whatsoever if we follow him a little further. In a universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt, other people are going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at the bottom no design, no purpose, no evil and no good. Nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. DNA neither knows nor cares. It just is, and we dance to its music. So good and evil don't exist. If a rock fall kills a climber, it makes no sense calling the rock evil. It just exists. If Pol Pot chooses to eliminate 1 million intellectuals, how could you call him evil if he was simply dancing to his DNA? Moreover, if good and evil don't exist, and as Michael Ruse and E.O. Wilson tell us, ethics is an illusion fobbed off on us by our genes to get us to cooperate, it is absurd for the new atheists to say that God is a monster or God isn't great. Far from their atheism delivering an explanation for morality, it dissolves it like acid. But worse still, new atheism has no hope of justice. The new atheists react vehemently against the idea that God pursues justice after death. Yet they claim to take morality seriously. This makes no sense. If there is no final accountability after death, then a Hitler can shoot his way to oblivion after murdering millions and ultimately get away with it. According to atheism, no terrorist victim will ever see justice done. Their moral sense and their desire for justice will prove to have been a hideous illusion. There is no hope. That, to me, ladies and gentlemen, is the ultimate moral outrage. Yet the new atheists say that religion is childish, like sucking on a dummy for baseless comfort. But what about their atheism? Polish Nobel laureate Czesław Miłosz says, "A true opium of the people is a belief in nothingness after death, the huge solace of thinking that our betrayals, greed, cowardice, murders, we are not going to be judged." Christianity teaches, ladies and gentlemen, that justice will be done by a judge whose appointment has been confirmed by his physical resurrection from the dead, so that faith in God is based on solid historical evidence. Christianity therefore upholds the values written on the consciences of all human beings, whether or not they believe in God, the values on which the freedoms of the new Europe depend. Ladies and gentlemen, the new atheism is fatally flawed in its attitude to reason, science, history, ethics and justice. I submit to you it is false. I therefore oppose the motion, noting in passing that its use of the ethical term should makes the motion logically incoherent for a new atheist anyway.